you haven't been on Twitter today to follow that story, it's a doozy. But we don't need to get into that. This is an Oilers stream. We don't need to talk about weird shit like that from the internet. Anyways, I was hoping we'd be sitting here today talking about an Oilers win. That didn't happen. So instead, I will go around the horn and ask everyone what they did last night. Zach, what did you get up to with the game canceled?
I sat down, had a couple glasses of wine, put my feet up,
fancy boy.
and I just relaxed. It was nice. Just took the night off. It was good to have a little rest evening.
No movies, no TV shows, nothing going on?
Well, my girlfriend and I, we've been watching Fear the Walking Dead, so we binged through multiple episodes of that last night.
Fair enough. Nation Dan, what did you get up to last night?
Well, the double life that I live, I get to cover other sports as well, and so I was actually scheduled to cover the Dodgers and Seattle game, so it gave me a little bit of relief that I didn't have to have both games going at the same time and trying to pay attention to both. It's not so bad when you're paying attention to two different sports, but the Mariners pulled out a 7-3 win against those Dodgers.
Yep,
so.
Those Mariners, they can be pesky. Josh Park, what did you get up to last night?
You know what? I ate dinner, and then me and my mom are on this big binge right now playing this game called Wingspan. So we played some board games, and then I worked out, and I got caught up on Big Brother Canada, which is like, it's kind of terrible right now, but I'm trying to get caught up.
Big Brother, I actually think this season has been pretty good. Like, everyone kind of came to play. Also, is anyone else on this podcast watching Big Brother Canada?
No.
Not right now. I'm going to binge it.
There was a guy who got evicted early on. Spoiler alert. His name is Josh, and he looks so much like Josh Park.
No, don't do that. No, dude. Because people told me that.
Yes.
I literally had someone reach out and tell me. They're like, yo, you look like this Josh guy from Big Brother. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because this dude is like, he's not like, I don't want to say he's like a bad looking dude, but he's just like this, like, he's like tiny and frail. And I'm like, oh, frick.
Well, so you were. That's why you took that time off.
Yeah, you're in the Big Brother house. Today is also hashtag National Puppy Day. I feel like this comes 8 times a year, so to troll me, Dan has brought Penn onto the stream.
Hey, Penn. Say hi to your fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's International Puppy Day, buddy. Isn't that exciting?
It's so exciting to see all these teams and corporations post the same pictures of dogs that they posted 3 months ago when it was probably like hashtag National Dog Day or whatever. I don't know. I'm being a Grinch about this.
Last Friday when they just tweeted
out. Are you having a rough day?
Okay.
Oh my God.
We're moving on. We are moving on. The day off last night, the Oilers have had a condensed schedule, but they've been playing well. Some would say playing their best hockey of the year, and they were going up against a Habs team that actually would have been like pretty banged up. So I ask you this, is the rest a good thing for the Oilers, or did this potential break due to COVID come at the worst possible time, Zach Lang?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think you'll take as much rest as you can get at this time of year. But in the same breath, the Oilers have kind of been rolling here, right? Like 2 fantastic games against Winnipeg last week rather. We really got to see Edmonton play a style of game that they've not really done a lot in the past. Like, truly locking down a strong offensive team like Winnipeg, I was pretty impressive. So I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think Montreal was just scared after they saw how oily the boys were looking in warm-ups yesterday, and that's the real reason why they didn't want to play.
Habs saw pregame skate, and we're like, you know what? We're good for tonight. Josh Park, is the rest going to benefit the Oilers, or you just want to see the oily boys keep it rolling?
No, man, I wanted to see them keep it rolling. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but this team is rolling right now, and the rest is going to be good because they're coming up in a tough stretch here against Montreal and Toronto, but we're going to have a good break next week, or I guess it would be in a week and a half from now. There's a 3 or 4 day set there where the boys are going to have it off. But I don't know, man. From a betting perspective, I emptied my account on last night's game. As soon as I saw Toffoli wasn't playing and the Oilers were still a road dog, dude, I'm telling you, I literally emptied my account on last night's game, and I was ready to walk out a champion. And then the game got canceled. I know that's like a first world problem that like that's not important, but I'm just a little disappointed because I was ready.
I understand. I totally understand. The Oilers have been a good road team and a good underdog team this year, so I was on it as well. Nation Dan, time off going to benefit the Oil, or could this rest maybe disrupt some solid play?
Well, I really enjoyed the people that believe that this is a conspiracy to keep the Montreal Canadiens from having to play us down a couple men, but I don't know. I think that the goalies could probably use the rest more than anything, and get them freshened up for this, as Josh mentioned, the stretch against the Habs and the Leafs. That is, it's pretty important in the sense that, I think we're sitting pretty comfortably in the top 3 spots in our division. But if you can continue to create that separation from that 4th place spot, it's all the better for you.
If you look right now at the North Division standings, Edmonton, you mentioned it, kind of comfortably in a spot there. They're 5 points up on the Habs. The Habs do have 3 games in hand. But I mean, like, worst case scenario for me right now is they finish 4th in the division. Because I look at Vancouver, they're 7 points back of Edmonton. They've played 2 more games than the Oilers. I look at the Calgary Flames, who are in the dumps. They are 9 points back with just 1 game in hand, and not enough head-to-head matchups for the rest of the year for them to quickly swing things around. So I'm looking at it and going, I'm personally no longer worried about them missing the playoffs. I think this is a playoff team, and they're playing the rest of the year for seeding. Josh, I'll come to you. Are same mindset, or do you still think, are you still a little nervous that this team might fall apart?
Yeah, obviously, we're entering the second half of the season here. We're coming up on it. So, you never know what could happen, especially in a division where it's 4-point nights every single game. But, Tyler, I would 100% agree with you. This team's making the playoffs. It's just a matter of where they're going to get seated. All of a sudden, the top of the North Division has changed completely as to what it was a week and a half ago. There were a lot of people saying Toronto had this division locked up and it was kind of a runaway and it was going to be a battle for 2, 3, 4. But now the Oilers are right up in the mix there. Same with Winnipeg. Honestly, I think that 1 through 4, however this kind of ends up shaking up, you wouldn't be surprised of how these teams ended up getting seeded. I think, you have your 3 teams, Winnipeg, Toronto, and Edmonton, that are kind of shoo-ins right now if this season continues to trend like it is. And then at 4th spot's going to be interesting, whether it's, Montreal, Calgary, like you mentioned, is terrible right now. And then Vancouver still, they're struggling as well. So, yeah, it's gotten to the point Edmonton's going to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of if it's 1, 2, 3, probably not 4. So somewhere in that top 3 range.
Nation Dan, you feeling comfortable? You feeling like we can start planning virtual playoff parties, I suppose?
Yeah, I said it on Owen Radio this weekend. I think the Calgary Flames are done.
Yeah.
But I think we would be remiss in forgetting the fact that a week ago the Calgary Flames were in the midst of their 3 or 4 game winning streak under Darryl Sutter. The Leafs have had their winning streaks and then have gone silent since then. So you can't let your foot off the throat of these teams, or you could find yourself in a position where you are sliding back into that contention again for the 4th spot. I do believe that this team is a playoff bound team. I've said that since the start. I believe that they're going to win this division in the playoffs too. But I just think that they need to maintain that consistent effort, and it's great to see them do that against Winnipeg for a couple of games. But you got to show them that that you can keep doing that week after week. It's not just a flash in the pan against a team that you have to win a game or 2 against. It needs to be a consistent effort going forward.
Give us your take. We got the Twitter stream going, Twitch. We're live on Facebook and YouTube as well. I'm monitoring Twitter and Twitch, where Mistaken Mexican has said no bag milk in the chat today. That's an F. Bag milk, not as active in the chat as he was last week on State of the Nation, when he was pretty much just saying nonsense. Back to the Oilers. Beans. Going back to the Oilers. At the beginning of the year, I thought the playoffs would be up in the air right up until that last game. And, I looked at them as a team that could maybe win a playoff round. That was kind of my goal for them. My expectations for this team have changed. I think this is a group that is good enough to come out of the North. I think they can beat Toronto in a 7-game series. Even though I think Winnipeg might be the most complete team in this division, Edmonton can clearly beat them. There's no one that really scares me too much here. And at the beginning of the year, I think we all would have predicted the Oilers to be a playoff team. Josh Park, I'll start with you on this one. Have your expectations for this team changed since the beginning of the season?
I would say a little bit. Maybe not even the beginning of the season, but maybe, I don't know, a week and a half into the season. All of a sudden, the Oilers, I believe they started 3-5, and it was kind of a question mark of, okay, is this team deep enough to make a legitimate run this year? Do we have the goaltending that we need? Of course, Mikko Koskinen was at the helm for the entire beginning of the season, and we didn't have Mike Smith yet. So, I would say my expectations for this team have kind of wavered I would say 2 to 3 times throughout the duration of this season already. Expectations were high off the top, then kind of they dwindled a little bit, and now seeing where we're at in the North, I think that the ceiling, as Michael Jordan would say, the ceiling is the roof for this team right now. Like if you take us and stack us up against any team in the North, I would take us. This team's buzzing right now. We're hot.
Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? You look at it, like, for Calgary or Vancouver to really make the playoffs, they have to play like 700 hockey the rest of the way. Like, that's not going to be easy. And especially for two teams that are struggling to make things happen. Sure, we've still got 23 games left in the season here for these teams. But, like, Calgary would have to go 16-6-1 the rest of the way to make playoffs. I don't see that happening. I think the Oilers are about a surefire lock for the playoffs right now as they've ever been. Coming into the year, I thought if Edmonton could sneak into that number 4 spot, they might be able to do a bit of noise and pull off an upset. But I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was saying to them that I think this is the most complete Edmonton Oilers team, cup run notwithstanding in 05-06, that I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, you look top to bottom, this Oilers team is really, really good. And I would even say that they're better than the 2017 playoff team right now. So it's really interesting. I do agree. I think the Oilers can make some absolute noise and be the team to come out of the North this year.
I think the reason I'd say they're better than 2017 is because, like, 2017 was Leon Draisaitl's coming out party. Okay, now he's established as like a top 5 player in the NHL at the minimum. The goaltending is maybe where I'm a little bit concerned, but in 2017, they had nothing after Cam Talbot. At least with this group here, if Smith or Koskinen falters, like, there's a safety net with Staylock. They have at least a solid 1A, 1B system. Nation Dan, your expectations for this team, have they changed from the beginning of the year? Do you think they could really go deep now?
No, yeah. I like I said, I right from the get-go, and I don't want to be that guy that, flexes and brags, but when it came to Calgary, I said that their offense was going to let them down. Their offense hasn't changed since 2015 or 16, something like that. I said with the Winnipeg Jets, they are Connor Hellebuck's team. Now, I was a little bit wrong with that because their offense is much better than I expected. Montreal Canadiens started off the season better than expected, but it's been since then, it's just been kind of, issue after issue that they've been struggling with. Toronto has been better than I think I thought that they would be, but they're still long in the tooth in the back end. And, as their top guys go, the rest of the team goes. So, I think that this Edmonton team is built really well. I don't know if I have the same feeling as I did in 2006, where I just, like, at the start of the playoffs, I just felt like that team was really super modular. They were able to play a trap-style game one game and then run and gun with you the next. I don't know if this team can consistently run and gun with another team. I know that they can score the goals, but then putting that expectation on the back end on the goalies to be able to, stonewall another team, I just don't think it's there. So, I don't know. I'm pretty much at the same spot. I've tried to be pretty zen through the losing streaks and the losing in general, and tried to be as zen as I can be when they're absolutely crushing a team like Winnipeg. Like, that third period in that last game was the best third period I've seen in years from this team. So it's hard not to ride too high on those highs, but It's been a lot of fun to watch.
Well, it's been interesting to listen to just on that note. Like, I've been listening to all the post-game pressers and transcribing, as I'm sure people see on Twitter. It's really interesting because, even when the Oilers were on that 3-game skid against Toronto, the attitude from everybody was still, well, we can't get too low. And then when they come out and they win massive back-to-back games against Winnipeg, it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, it's business as usual. Like, they just seem to have a different mindset, and they've really learned how to play that complete game. I think we can be talking about Connor McDavid truly taking over as one of the, McDavid's always been an incredible player offensively, right? But
he's on a new level.
He's on a new level. He's on a new level. Like, he's taking over games single-handedly in ways that he hasn't in the past. And I think that's incredibly impressive to see too. So, I mean, I think this is one of those maybe anything can happen teams. So it's going to be really fun to see what happens down the stretch here.
Yeah, like to that point too, Zach, I just want to say, and I feel like everybody should be saying this on everything that they're on, but like we really, as a person that's in my early 30s, I've seen some things. It's one of those things that we can't forget the fact that we are watching some of the best hockey from those two players themselves. 97 and 29 are some of the best. We're watching some of the best hockey we'll ever see. Wayne Gretzky was special, and I saw him, in the early 90s and was able to kind of grasp what he was doing even then. But this is unbelievable hockey. It's such a skill level to watch. And like you said, Zach, every single night with McDavid on your team, anything can happen. You could be lined up against the Vegas Golden Knights, and that team could win that series because they have Connor McDavid on their team. So it's so exciting to watch. Hopefully we get the goaltending that we deserve in the playoffs this time, as opposed to what we got against Chicago from both those guys. But like you said, Tyler, there's also Stalock in the wings. Hopefully we don't have to pull him out too often, but I hope that he gets some game action here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you look at it, McDavid is 18 points up on the next player not named Leon Draisaitl in the scoring race in the NHL. That's ridiculous separation. Like, even just from an offensive standpoint, it's pretty remarkable to see what he's been able to do this year.
I got Connor McDavid at 4-1 to win the scoring race on my sportsbook at the start of the year. That is easy money. Now I also have Austin Matthews to win the Rocket Richard. So Connor, let's maybe look to mix in a few more passes here. Let's slow down on the goal scoring for a few games, just for me. Over on the Twitch chat, Mistaken Mexican, on the topic of the Flames, he said if the Flames made a big splash before deadline day, say they got Forsberg or Ekholm, do you still think they could miss? Like Zach, you said it might be too late for the Calgary Flames. You can load up. You can be one of the best teams in the league, and you have to win it that 700 or 7. You have to get points in like 70% or whatever down the stretch. You know how many teams in the NHL are doing that? There's 5. So are the Flames suddenly going to become a top 5 team in the NHL if they make a big deadline ad? I don't see that happening.
I don't. And you know what? I don't even see the acquisition of somebody like an Arvidsson or an elite offensive talent changing that. That Flames team seems to be so inept offensively this year. They just don't seem to be able to generate what they need to generate to be able to keep up with any of the teams in the North Division, let alone any of the other teams in the NHL, right? So, even still, if we're talking about a standard year of the Pacific Division, the Calgary might be one of the worst teams in the division this year. Right? Like they very well could be, because you look at the way that teams like LA and Arizona, even San Jose are playing. Like they're still playing some strong hockey, all things considering, right? So no, I think it's definitely too little, too late for those clubs.
Nicholas98 Jacob on Twitch. Leon is so much better defensively than the last seasons, and the impressive thing is he called it before this season. Josh Park, have you noticed a more complete Leon Draisaitl this season?
I would say yes, in a way. It's tough to say a more complete Leon Draisaitl when you won the Hart and the scoring race last year, because it's like, okay, like how can you get more complete than that? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the past that Leon Draisaitl has said that one of his goals in his career would be to one day win a Selke. He said that, didn't he? But either way, you can see him trending in that direction. And, he had a little bit of a slide there, halfway through kind of the beginning portion of the season where I think he went 8 games without a goal. But now all of a sudden, McDry back together and he was firing on all cylinders. And then they were able to break that lineup and he was continuing to trend in the right direction. So, complete Leon Draisaitl, I would say, we're getting a Leon Draisaitl we'd expect. He had an unbelievable season last year. And he's just carrying on this year. It still amazes me that he can get that big old paddle on the ice and just fire pucks at the net. It just amazes me.
Yeah.
That's his whack, man.
Every year, like he scored 50 a few years ago, and heading into the next season, I was kind of like, okay, we need to maybe temper our expectations. I'm not sure if Leon Draisaitl can be that good again. And he proved me wrong by winning the Hart Trophy. Then coming into this year, I even kind of said, he's in that upper echelon, but like maybe there'll be a step back at some point. But again, he's proven me wrong, Nation Dan. He did not take a step back at all this year.
Well, and to your point too, I mean, the criticisms have been that he is not as good in his own end, and he is carried by his line mates in Connor McDavid, and those are just simply aren't true either, because he's doing it with with a different crew every night now, and unfortunately we haven't even been able to see that line that line combination of Yamamoto and Nuge with him that was so deadly pre-pandemic. So yeah, it's for Leon, it's something special, and he just continues to climb up the German scoring charts.
Yeah.
And we'll probably pass those by the early in next season. So yeah, it's like, I mean, I think we talked about it as Oiler fans a couple years ago, how we're looking at a Gretzky-Messier kind of combination, but I don't think that it's that far off anymore. That's kind of the position that I'm feeling like we're in.
Question for you, Zach. Josh brought up Draisaitl for the Selke. Is there any sort of numbers that suggest he could be in that race? Like, I know his goal differential is like off the charts right now, but like, is that generally enough to get you in the conversation? Like, what should we be looking at?
Yes and no. I think personally, when I look at Selke, you got to look at some more of the underlying numbers and the shot rates and the goal rates. And unfortunately, with Draisaitl, he's just not quite there yet in the numbers. Unfortunately, I think he's getting there. I think a guy like McDavid, though, could make some serious noise in the Selke conversation this year. I do. Like he's doing a really, really good job of suppressing the opposing team's offense. So it's going to be really interesting to see the way that vote starts to break down, because when we talk about the Selke, we're the voters are always looking at who are the complete two-way package players, the Sean Couturiers, the Mark Stones, those kind of guys who have great impacts in the offensive zone, but also defensively as well, right? So, of course, that's what the Selke's for. So I think there's a legitimate chance that McDavid could be in that conversation. Draisaitl, he's still got a ways to go, I think. But, there was an interesting conversation that Tippett had with some of the media after one of the Winnipeg games this week where, the media was asking Tippett about the defensive game that Draisaitl and McDavid have seemed to recommitted themselves to this year. And Tippett went as far as saying, there was obviously all of that noise last summer, and there was a lot of what he felt unjust criticism on McDavid and Draisaitl. And if one thing is clear, it's that both of these guys have really taken that to heart this last year. I think we have seen an improvement in Draisaitl's defensive game, and I think with age, that's something that happens for a lot of players. When you come into the NHL, it's when you're an elite talent like that, it's easier to come in and produce offense than it is to produce defense. And that's a type of game defensively that a lot of players have to learn from. So I think, down the road in a couple years, Draisaitl could very well get in that conversation, but I think it's a little too soon right now.
Interesting. Very interesting. Oilers and major awards. I think we can all agree McDavid probably, if he's not number one to win the Hart, then he's number two. So I know some were making the case for Patrick Kane south of the border. McDavid probably has the scoring race locked up. He might have the Rocket Richard, Darnell Nurse, Norris rumblings. But Nation Dan, you had someone ask you about Mike Smith and the Vezina?
No, that was Zach.
That was me, actually.
Oh, that was you, Zach.
Yeah. I was on a podcast yesterday where I was a guest, and one of the hosts had asked me about my thoughts on Mike Smith for Vezina, and it caught me by surprise, because I wasn't you're never really thinking Mike Smith for Vezina. The argument that I kind of said there, and I'll say it again here, was that, Mike Smith's numbers, his save percentage is great. His underlying numbers as a goaltender are solid this year. But, when we look at the Vezina, it's all about games played and wins, right? You look at a guy like even Connor Hellebuck last year, right? The reason he won was because he willed the Winnipeg Jets into the playoffs. He willed them on his back by playing a lot of games and doing a very good job of it. I said it, I think Smith is a top 5 guy, maybe. Like, I think he might eke in as like a number 4 or 5 in voting, maybe. But it was kind of interesting nonetheless, because he is still having a very, very good year.
I think out of goalies who have played at least 10 games, I want to say he's still on just outside of the top 10 in goals against and save percentage, so it probably doesn't get him there. But you brought up an interesting point about games played and wins. Like, it almost feels like the Vezina's turned into more of not maybe the best goalie, but the goalie who is most valuable to their team making the playoffs.
Yeah, 100%.
That could almost end up being Mike Smith in a weird way.
It could
I feel like it's like one of those questions where it's like, which goalie in the NHL would you start a franchise with today if you had to win the season kind of question, more than is he the best statistical goalie? That's where the Jennings Trophy, where you
lowest
get the save percentage, just continue. That's where you get that award. But
you look at it, and Mike Smith is 14th in the league in wins right now, and he's like 30th in the league in games played, right? So, sure, he's won, 11 of 16 games he's played. He's probably got a higher winning percentage than any other goalie in the league at the moment. But it is true, right? It's like the same thing with the Calder Trophy. Yeah. How many years have we clamored for Hall or Nugent Hopkins or McDavid or Yakupov? But none of them were able to complete a full season in their rookie campaigns, right? Yeah. I mean, if a guy like McDavid can't win the Calder Trophy off the rookie season that he had, right? So it's very similar. It's very similar.
And he lost it to a 25-year-old.
Yeah, exactly, right? So
still not bitter.
Yeah, no, definitely not bitter.
Let's end it with one more question here, and I'll start with you on this one, Josh Park. We just basically spent the last 26 minutes gushing over the Edmonton Oilers. Would it be a mistake for Ken Holland not to add at the deadline, or is this a good year to maybe just keep your powder dry, see how far this current group can take you?
There's kind of two different ways you can approach this. It's a COVID impact season, pandemic year. I know a lot of owners and GMs don't really want to be, spending a ton of money at the deadline is what I've heard. And, it's a matter of, do you really want to take the risk this year? Do you want to give up a bunch of assets in the future to try to pick up a rental when, depending on COVID regulations and stuff, you might not even get the player until there's 3 or 4 games left in the regular season. But, me, I'm a gamer. I want him to make a little bit of a splash at the deadline. My heart tells me, I would absolutely love it if Ken Holland went after a top 6 forward at the deadline. But, it's a matter of if you're going to trade with the team down south, then you got to get it going now. You got to make the trade now or in the next week or so. And, if you want to try to make a swap with a team in the Canadian division, I don't know if anyone other than the Ottawa Senators are going to answer phone calls, because I don't think the Canucks believe that they want to give up a bunch of, future assets. Considering they think they could probably be in it again next year. So I don't know. One interesting player that I was taking a look at earlier today, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but do you think that the Senators would maybe be willing to give up Dadonov if the right pieces came back in the other direction? Because, he's $5 million per year player. He's got 2 years left on his deal after this one, I think. He's a he's a left winger, former 28 goal scorer. I think that the Senators, if they're getting a lot of, assets in return, I feel like they might be willing to move from him, even though they just signed him.
I'm sure Eugene would love to move on, or Jack Maxwell, depending on how you look at it, would love to move on from $5 million. I don't think I touched Dadonov at that price, though. You
don't think so?
That's a little bit too much for me.
If you're the Oilers and you can get money going the other direction, and I'm talking heavy money. If you can get James Neal going in the other direction.
Oof, well then, yeah.
But what if you have to throw in a first?
Yeah, I don't think Holland, from everything I've seen and read from Holland, I think he's pretty trigger shy right now with what he lost in his, that wasn't his fault, but the reality is the cupboards are bare when it comes to draft picks right now, and so it's not a bad idea, Josh, by any means. You're right. I think that the issue is the plus that he would have to put into that deal to make it make sense for them. And at this point, what do the Senators think? Where's their plan at, right? Is it 5 years out? Are they 10 years out? What is their? I just don't even know what their mentality is, because the team is competing right now, but they have 2 players to build around. You need more than that. We look at Buffalo. There's not a lot. Yeah. There's not a lot going on there, and they've got a lot of pieces there. So I don't know. It's a good idea.
I feel like, from the Ottawa standpoint, I feel like they only really have 3 untouchables right now. Would you guys agree? There's kind of 3 untouchables on that roster, and everyone else is up for grabs.
Well, Shabbat, Stützle, Tkachuk.
Yeah, it's Shabbat, Stützle, Tkachuk are kind of the 3 untouchables, I would think, and I feel like they would move on anyone else.
The price was right, maybe. We're running low on time here, but Zach, do you think the Oilers should load up at the deadline? Is it a mistake not to?
It's tough, right? I mean, the Oilers don't have a lot of assets. They don't want to move any of their draft picks. It's got to be money in. It's got to be money out, right? Could there be some depth moves maybe? Sure, potentially. Do I really see that happening? No, I don't. I don't even know if the Oilers are going to make any moves. You look at the depth the Oilers actually have, even going down onto the taxi squad. The Oilers are getting some incredibly valuable minutes from guys off the taxi squad this year, right? I just don't see a need to spend assets. If we're talking to Dadonov, I honestly don't hate that. Just a quick glance at his underlying numbers. pretty solid on a pretty terrible Ottawa team. He's bit by the PDO bug right now, and his goals rate is pretty low because of it. But beyond that, he's driving play. His expected goals percentage is solid, given the makeup of that roster, and he's having some good impacts on an isolated sense. So, if you're able to move out James Neal and would you guys do James Neal and Caleb Jones for Dadonov? Maybe, but beyond that, I don't know. I don't see much else happening, right?
I don't know.
I know I'm in the minority. I love James Neal. I just think he brings to this team exactly what they need sometimes, which is a kick in the ass to just shoot the puck a bunch of times. He just does that. He comes out and he fires the puck around.
He makes $4 million too much.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love James Neal if he was at $875.
Yeah. Like if they don't move, if they don't find a taker for James Neal, they're buying him out this offseason. I'm 100% convinced of that. I don't think James Neal is an Oiler 8 months from now or whatever. The deadline conversation will continue next week on State of the Nation as we draw closer. An important date to keep in mind is April 1st. If the Oilers want a player in the lineup for the final 10 games of the regular season, they would need to acquire them by April 1st so they can get up here and start their quarantine by April 2nd. So that is I think that's an important date to keep in mind, and I'll end it on this. Double M in the chat. Last time I checked, McDavid was on pace for 99 points. Do you think he breaks 100? I think you'd be stupid to bet against him. Hopefully Connor McDavid gets some time in the next coming days to add to that point total, and hopefully we all have some hockey to watch for the rest of the week. Everybody, stay safe. Enjoy your week. Hopefully you enjoy a couple of Oilers games as well.
Peace and love.
Bye.
State of the Nation for March